Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome to yet again another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scott McKay. You can find me on most social media platforms at Scott McKay, SCOTMCKAY, including now on YouTube. My handle, as it were, is at Scott McKay. With me today is a new friend of mine, and we're going to talk about a topic where nowadays, at least, this is one where angels fear to tread. We're going to talk about online dating, and more specifically, the lion's share of this entire podcast is going to be devoted to your online pictures, and probably a bit about taking pictures and looking your best in general. My guest today is a gentleman named Joe Buchoff. He's from Austin, Texas, and he is the grandmaster over at Dating Unchained. And I want to welcome you, Joe.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Happy to have you, too. And you and I were chit-chatting before we hit record on this, and I level set with you that this may be a podcast that is replete with some hardball questions for you. And we may as well just throw it on the table up front. Joe, a lot of guys are pretty disillusioned with online dating nowadays in general. Some of the guys who've been single for a while, or perhaps single again, might even remember the good old days, the glory days of online dating, as it were. Back in the mid-aughts when everybody was on Match, nobody could filter their pictures. What you see is what you got. And if somebody was fake, we pretty much could figure it out. Nowadays, it's a completely different landscape. As Mac Miller once said, it ain't 2009 no more. What's your take on the online dating landscape nowadays in general, Joe? And tell us why you think there's reason to be optimistic about it.
100%. You're very right in all those assertions.
Well, I've been at this for a while.
For sure. For sure. This is one of the reasons I actually got into what I got into taking guys' dating profile photos so they could get more matches and dates. One of the key moments for me, I was traveling. I was a digital nomad for a while, and I was in Eastern Europe, Latvia specifically, and I had been approaching a lot of girls during the daytime, getting a lot of dates from that. And I was going online on online dating, and I wasn't getting as much. And over there's a more conservative culture, so it was harder to get what I wanted. I wanted something close and also sexual, and for them, it was harder to get to the sex part, and I didn't really know how to navigate that. So I was a little discouraged, and especially discouraged because I wasn't able to get the matches I wanted online. I remember specifically after the last straw on the camel's back, a rejection that I'd gotten. I remember in the hostel room on the bottom bunk, crying myself to sleep in the fetal position because I wasn't getting the matches that I wanted online.
Sounds more like a hostel room than a hostel room.
It was a hostel.
Yes.
And so I did a lot of work on myself. I did a lot of work on my photos. And I ended up, while I was in Latvia, dating one of my most favorite women I've ever dated. And I think in conclusion, it's a lot harder nowadays for sure, because you have to be the top 5% to get matches on Tinder. But if you are the top 5%, you have more than you can deal with. And that's what I try to get for people.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, Riga, Latvia is probably one of the most underrated places to visit in Europe.
That's where I was.
Yeah, the old town is just spectacular. And
amazing.
Just an amazing place to spend good quality time. I can imagine living there for, a month or two and meeting everybody. Everybody's extremely friendly. Latvia is one of those countries where, well, I guess most people in America probably can't even find it on the map. And so if you have the opportunity to go there for the first time, it's with a little bit of fear and trepidation, like, what's this place going to be like, And then you get there and realize it's just charming and fantastic. And above all, above the beer and food, which are both wonderful in the Baltics, the women are spectacular in the Baltics. I mean, you hear about Ukrainian women, you hear about Eastern European women, but those women from up there in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, which are collectively known as the Baltics, are just fantastic. And, on a side note, Belarusian women are equally fantastic. So I can imagine you going there and having no real shortage of pretty girls. I'm a little surprised to hear you say that they're more conservative sexually, because that's not usually the rap sheet on women from Eastern Europe. They're usually a little more sexual because of, how they've been raised, maybe nowadays with a return to Judeo-Christian values compared to the communist era. That may be changing, and they may be becoming a little bit more conservative, especially the younger women. But, come on, man, let's get real here. You're a handsome devil. You're not an old guy. You're pretty quick on your feet. You got stuff going on, and you're American. I mean, how can you lose in a place like Latvia? Really?
It was really fun. I did have some fun experiences for sure. This was about 5 years ago. Well, actually, exactly 5 years ago. I was there at this time of year in 2017, and I was a lot chunkier than I am now, and I was a lot more insecure. So I had that going against me.
Yeah, that's how you can lose, is by being insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, women
100%.
in general don't like that. They want you to be strong, be a leader, be very confident, because otherwise, if you can't stand up to them, how can you stand up for them? How can you protect anything if you can't even have enough self-confidence to get out of a wet paper bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
100%.
100%. Okay, so you're back in the United States, and the climate online nowadays is the swipe right, swipe left culture. You said something very interesting to me in our pre-interview before we started recording that I think a lot of guys already suspect is true. You said that women are looking for an excuse to swipe left on men. And you just backed that up by saying, hey, you know what? 95% of you are getting swiped left on, but if you're one of the top 5%, it's a bonanza. Talk about that for a second.
So there's actual data to back this up. Guys swipe right about, on average, some guys are more, some guys are less, but guys swipe right on about 50% of women. Girls swipe right on about 5% of guys. And also girls don't agree with each other as much because there's more criteria on what makes an attractive man than what makes an attractive woman. So the hard data is girls swipe right on 5% of guys and swipe left. So out of 20, they'll swipe right on 1, swipe left on 19. And they also won't necessarily agree on who that one is. So there's you have to be in the top 5% of guys to get matches. And that, some people would say that makes it really, really tough. And I would say it does. It's not wrong. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily a negative, because if you're willing to put in the work to get the photos, because photos are what matter the most on dating apps, if you're willing to get the photos and improve yourself behind the camera, because, the photos can only really be as good as you, then the world's your oyster.
Why do you think it is? I'm really curious to find your take on this. I have an opinion of my own, so fair warning, this is a loaded question, but I don't want to see this conversation with my take. I want to hear your fresh take on this. What do you think is going on there with men swiping right on so many people and women swiping right on so few people? Are men just more desperate? Are they less picky? What's really going on there?
So there's a couple factors here. I think one of the factors is this isn't a new thing. Girls generally tend to be more choosy. So guys, we choose, our sexual selection is who do we talk to? Who do we initiate conversation with? Who do we start? Because we're the initiators by default. So who do we go out and approach? Or who do we go out and swipe on? And girls, their choosing is who do we choose? Who do we allow in? And in history, if you read like pretty much any account, girls tend to be the choosy ones. They tend to be more choosy. And before online dating, it's who do I let talk to me, or who do I call back? Before there was texting or like answering machines, it's like, whose number do I keep in my phone? So I don't necessarily think this is a new thing. And then the second part of this is, I think Instagram, like before recent times, I don't think girls knew how pretty they were, because most girls didn't have access to mass feedback of how pretty they are. Now that anyone can post a photo on Instagram, and not even the most attractive girl would get like a ton of likes. And so it's like most girls can be like, oh, okay, whether it's true or not, I'm getting like 100 likes on this photo I didn't put any effort into. I must be super attractive. I don't have to take the first guy that comes my way. I need a guy who's 6 figures, 6 foot at least, super buff. And so there is, at least in Western culture, it's not as much in Latin America, although it is a little bit more than it used to, because I did travel there as well. But I think there's also an entitlement where there's unreasonable expectation from women because of social media.
I will say that I think you nailed it right on the head. Okay. And I will also say that you described it using completely different words and situational elements than I would have, which is fantastic, see, because these guys have heard my take before. And so when you come and put that new exciting twist on it, it adds something to the discussion for sure. Now, see, here's where I'm going to go with what you just said. As a dating relationship coach, I dig into the behind the scenes elements there, what's going on with the dating app companies themselves, what's on their minds, and I've been in the behind closed doors meetings where they talk about their strategies. My somewhat cynical opinion is when the dating apps hit your smartphone, that was the day the music died for online dating. It became just an incredibly superficial contest of whose pictures could grab one's attention in the shortest amount of time possible. Everything else be darned literally. Okay, so what happens is, in light of what you're talking about with men being, well, the ones who pursue, right? And women the ones who are being pursued. What happens is men are getting online and making the first move, and basically we've often talked in the dating advice world on ranking women from 1 to 10. It's more binary. It's woods and would nots, okay? If she's
100%.
a wood, you swipe right on her. Meanwhile, women by nature, and I would say this is archetypal, I would say this is primal. Women are designed to be protective of their sexuality and to evaluate the men who are pursuing them. All right? So they're going to choose from the men who have swiped right on them their favorite ones. Now, the flaw, I don't know if this is a feature or a bug in the female mind, but femininity chooses the man that femininity wants and assumes that masculinity is thinking exactly the way femininity does. So she sees 500 guys who've swiped right on her, and her psychology tells her, oh my goodness, just like you said, Joe, man, you really, really nailed it. All 500 of these men have chosen me. I'm their Disney princess. They all want me. So now I can sit back and have the luxury of choosing which of these guys I actually want. And so she writes back to 3 guys going, thank you so much for swiping me. I really think you're great. Meanwhile, the guy she's writing to, she's actually his 40th choice out of 500, right? Meanwhile, the woman's thinking, why did this guy flake on me? Why did this guy not write me back? So as much as men bemoan their online dating problems, I swipe right on all these women and none of them write back. Women are going, all these men swiped right on me and none of them are right for me. None of them will respond. Now, I alluded to how the online dating app companies have made hay out of this. It keeps everybody jonesing for likes, trying to get that dopamine rush. Nobody ever actually meets each other. And when and if they actually do, God only knows whether they're going to be the people they actually expect to meet or not, because they've had so little to go on. So the online dating companies keep everybody addicted to the apps, women because they're trying to get this needle in the haystack and getting frustrated, men because they're swiping right on anything that can fog a mirror and wear a skirt and getting frustrated. That's what's going on here. So going way back to the primal stuff, I might be throwing a wrench in your machine here, but hopefully it'll spur on the discussion. It's not that men are the chasers and women are the choosers. It's whoever has the options is choosing. So, for example, everybody's saying, oh, all these women, they get online, put a pretty picture up there, and everybody wants them. That's, in turn, only 5% of the female population. I mean, granted, with filters and everything else I'm sure we're going to talk about, which complicate matters all the more, everybody can be beautiful. But in real life, if you go to the grocery store, if you go out, walk in the park, you're going to go, oh, look at all these beautiful women. It's going to be, at best, 5% of the biological females you see out there who you would really feel sexually attracted towards. The rest of them are disappearing into the background. What men who are chasing all these beautiful women don't realize is they're the 95% equivalent of men that women are seeing as fading into the background. So along you come, and you agree with me 1,000% that 5% of the men are getting all the women, and that has never changed. Here's the thing. To quote Ron White again sideways for probably the second time in about 6 podcasts, you can't fix ugly. Okay? You can dress it up. You can put lipstick on a pig. Okay? So if a woman is really physically unattractive, she's got a problem. My opinion is about 95% of us as men are average, decent-looking guys. You know, we get a haircut, trim our nails, brush our teeth, take a shower, mix in some decent fashion, and we're going to look great. Meanwhile, most women do not want a boyfriend who's prettier than they are. They will shun that idea. And, you know, about 2.5% of us, God bless our hearts, have been hit with an ugly stick. And about 2.5% of us are gorgeous, model quality, George Michael looking mofos like you. Okay? So if a guy does the best with what he's got going on, women will respect that. And if he's what I call a big 4 man, he's confident. He's masculine in the way women define it. He makes women feel safe and comfortable in his presence. And he's got some character. Well, then he's going to be on track to have women who are gorgeous and wonderful go wild for him. But, and this is a huge but, he needs more than a split second to get that across. Now, you used to be able to do that. That's in the used to could department on Match.com, and certainly nowadays on long form sites, which, to be completely forthright with you, Joe, I still recommend guys go on, like Match, if they're going to be looking for a long-term relationship. Notching your bedpost, you know, do whatever you got to do, hack away. But the thing is, the men who are successfully attractive to women, it's not that they have to pursue women. It's that they get to pursue women. I get to call the shots. I get to select the women I'm going to go talk to, I'm going to show interest in. Because if you talk to the 95% of women who are sexually frustrated, who are frustrated by their relationships on the women's side, they're saying all men have all the power, because if we go and throw ourselves at a guy or ask him out, we look like a slut. We look like we're too sexually forward. Plus, we as women don't like that anyway. We like a man who pursues us, who leads. You know, we want a movie moment. And most women aren't seeing that happen. And they're waiting around for a guy to show up and ask them out. And for 95% of those women, that isn't so easy. And here's the kicker. Those 95% of women are still focusing on the 5% of men. So really, it's the same thing on both sides. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. I would agree with pretty much everything you said. I think we agree on the specifics of what's going on. The what to do about it, I feel like we have different attitudes, which is fine. It's good to disagree with people, or at least have a different viewpoint. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm trying to figure out which direction to go in.
Well, let me help you out. You said we disagree on some of the fundamentals. Tell me what you believe. Yeah. That's different than me.
I wouldn't say we disagree on the what's happening. I think we disagree on the what to do about it, or what it means. One of my views is that if society changes, or if circumstances change, you either adapt or you complain about it. But complaining about it is not something that will really help you. And I feel like I could sit back. I could have, when I was in Latvia, I sat back and being, it's so hard for me. I have an interesting life. I'm traveling. I might be a little chunkier than I want to be, but women should like me as I am. And that's kind of what the 95% of girls who are like, well, these 5% of guys should fall over head over heels for me because I'm a princess and they should want me. And I don't think that's a helpful attitude. It's not necessarily an incorrect attitude, but it doesn't get you from no matches to matches.
Well, let me interrupt you real quickly because I agree with you 100% on that. There are a lot of women out there who are getting bad advice such that, oh, you're beautiful just the way you are. You're a goddess. I mean, the dating advice where you're a goddess, I think, is incredibly harmful. So, I mean, you and I are on the same page with that. I think,
100%.
Just kind of as an aside before you continue, I saw something on Quora where a person asked, how do you know if you're beautiful or not? For real. And this person was asking other women. And someone said, oh, that's simple. Post a selfie of yourself on Facebook and say, I'm so ugly. And if people go, oh my God, what a bitch, you're fishing, you're hot. If they go, no, you're not, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous, you're ugly. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, man, that is a 100% truthism right there. So yeah, a lot of women who aren't really in a position to attract men are being lied to. And I think a lot of women really just want to be lied to because it's junk food, comfort food in the moment, without really wanting to do anything about it. And this, of course, leads to the proliferation of dating advice where you whisper 2 simple words in a man's ear and he drops everything and loves you forever. And that's, of course, not true. But anyway, you're right on the money. Continue. You're on to something.
Sure. So I believe as a man, it's our job, if we want to get something, to do what is necessary to get it. I feel like it's not like an objective truth, but it's a helpful mindset. It points to the right action. And so if I want to get more dates, you mentioned that I was really attractive. And that's something that I worked on for a long time. My friend's a fashion coach. I actually work with him, partner with him. I created a guide for all my photo shoot clients on what to get and where to get it to look great for the photo shoot. And also you'll get the clothes to wear in everyday life as well. And your fashion will be instantly upgraded. And he specifically helps guys to get their fashion on point to attract women, not just look good, but also specifically to attract women. And I paid for that. I worked on my body. I hired a trainer and I worked on my physique. I worked on my grooming. I did a lot for myself to get from where I was to where I am now. I actually did an interview with somebody else specifically about my weight loss, and he posted up photos of who I used to be, and somebody was like, man, this guy went from a 2 to an 8. And that's true. So like, sure, there are obstacles in everybody's paths, and some of those obstacles are more easily surmountable than others, and some of them might be impossible, although I don't like to use that word because it might just be a lot harder for some people. But I do believe that if there's a will, there's a way. And so if somebody wants to be like this like Leo DiCaprio looking dude, or at least him when he was a little younger, then they can be to an extent. So there is, I would say, like, as a man, if I want to get girls, number one is to max myself out. And part of that on online dating specifically is to max out my profile. And the number one mover on a profile, I would say pretty much the only mover, are your photos. And we talked about this before in the pre-interview, as you called it. Most guys, I would say, if you were not them, but if you were to rate their photos are a 1, 2, or 3 out of 10. And that is a bad thing, but there's no shame in that, because girls go out and take photos of each other, and every single girl is pretty much an amateur model and an amateur photographer, at least. But guys, like, we don't really want to be needy, or we don't want to like be the weirdo, like, oh, I'm going to take photos of me everywhere I go. So we tend not to be great at modeling, and we tend not to be great at photography unless it's something we study specifically. So what I like to say is, and most guys, like you said, I would say are average, maybe a bit above, a bit below. And so if you're a 5 as a guy, but your photos are a 2, the instant you max out your photos, it's no longer a bottleneck. You're not going to get matches like a 10 if you're not a 10, but you'll get matches like a 5. And that's more than, and I would say if your photos are amazing, you might get matches like a 6 or a 7. And that can get the dates trickling in, can get you at least somewhat satisfied. As you work on yourself, you get more matches and more dates. And then after you've worked on yourself a little bit, you get more photos. And then at that time, you're a 7 or you're an 8 or you're a 9. And then you get more and more matches and you're a top 5% guy.
Now, see, that's all well and good. But to go off what you said about how when times change, men need to adapt in order to succeed, I'm going to go completely off the board on you. My humble opinion, maybe it's my arrogant opinion, either way, is that men should just stop burying their nose in their smartphones, get out from behind the freaking computer, and go out into the real world once again and meet real women in real life, especially post-COVID, where everybody's social muscles have atrophied, and become an agent for being warm and light and drawing people out again, because I've already seen firsthand women become addicted to you when you become that guy in their life. I think we're done with online stuff as being predominant, and we should just go out and meet people. I think we've been cooped up too long. What do you say about that?
So I would say I would agree with you when the first part of what you said. Going out and meeting girls in real life is freaking awesome. And I would not if one of my clients said like, hey, I'm only going to do online dating and not talk to girls in person, I'm like, well, are you getting enough matches to be happy? And they're like, no. I'll be like, no, well, you should do both. I think the ideal is you build that muscle and you get past that fear and you build those social skills and you're able to go and approach women in everyday life or go to social situations and make lady friends and then, you know, turn those into relationships. The main girl I'm seeing right now, I actually met her. So I organize a private karaoke room every month. At first, it was for photographers in Austin. Now it's private, and I invite people to a group because I want people that I like their energy, and I don't want just any random stranger. And I have enough people coming that I don't really need everyone to come. But at first, it was just photographers, and she came to every single one, and we just kind of hit it off. And you know, we see each other on a regular basis now, which is pretty freaking awesome. So I wholeheartedly believe that it's important to be able to talk to women in everyday life. There's a lot of skills that come with it and a lot of insecurities that you confront and surpass in the process that you don't confront or surpass with online dating. Online dating, I believe its best place is as one source of dates, not necessarily the only source, unless you're the top 1% man, you have too many people matching with you to handle. Then I would say only do online dating because you can't handle, you know, it's too much time or whatever. But for most people, I would say online dating is one source, and it's a great source because I would say it even supplements in a great harmony with if you're going out and talking to girls in person, but you know that you have 5 girls that just gave you their numbers on online dating, you're not going to be as needy and you're going to be more charming and more non-needy and more secure when you talk to those girls in person in everyday life. And the other way around too, if you're talking to girls in person and say like you don't get matches for a few days, you're not going to be like, oh damn, what do I do? I'm gonna buy like 5 boosts. Oh man. And then you're going to be like, no, like I'm about to go out to talk to girls. I usually get a few numbers, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, the rich get richer when you're attracted to women. You and I are on the same page. I believe online dating is an arrow in your quiver. The problem is I've been happening across online posts and articles talking about how to do better at dating and how to meet the right woman, meet the right man, and they quite literally only talk about online dating as if it's the only way to meet women nowadays. And of course, with the Me Too and the talk about toxic masculinity, a lot of guys are just flat out horrified to even go meet women. It's very frustrating. But really the catalyst for my opinion there that I gave a few minutes ago was you simply saying you got to man up and do what works. You got to reinvent yourself. You got to go out there and make it happen, Captain. So one of the things you just mentioned that I thought was very interesting is this idea of once you have a few successes in your life, you're not needy and clingy anymore, which of course makes you inherently more attractive. Hence why I said the rich get richer, which these guys have heard me say before around here. It's very frustrating to guys who aren't there yet. But indeed, if I have a few women I've met online and I know they liked me, I have what I call 2 bonanzas, Joe, which is a concept whereby if you can get 2 women who really are your type, who are your top choices, to adore you and like you, you're going to think, well, you know, I'm all set. You know, if it's one, it could be a fluke. But when the second one shows up, hey, you know what? Not only do I have a fallback plan, but hey, I must actually be attractive to women. So when you go talk to the third one, you're far, far less insecure about rejection or bothering her or anything like that because you've seen it work in your favor. And of course, if you get a couple, 3 women online to be attracted to you and you go out on a date with them and it works out pretty well, then you'll be empowered not only online but offline as well. So you and I are on the same page here. Let's talk specifically about your pictures, you know, because this is what you do for a living. I got to be honest with you, Joe. I took a look at your website, and the very first picture is a guy with his shirt off, basically. You also have a lot of pictures of men drinking and a lot of guys who look very douchey. And all 3 of those particular portrayals have come under a lot of fire from other dating coaches and people who give advice in this arena, saying those are things you don't want to do. Your shirt off pic, for some reason, women just roll their eyes and go, why are you trying too hard? Even if you have great abs. The second one, men drinking. So many women have had such horrible run-ins with alcoholics that it's just a huge red flag up front. So you're probably better off avoiding it. And then, you know, I guess the douchebag part is really very debatable. I think douchebags do get women, but I think they tend to get very superficial women by virtue of being douchey. I think the women who are down to earth, girl next door, women of character roll their eyes at guys who look like that. But then again, they may also excuse it because, hey, it's just a picture and he's trying to look good. What say you?
So there's a lot I have to say on this, and this is one of the subjects I love to cover because it's something that I can help guys with that there are very few others helping them with. I think the advice you gave, it comes from a good place and it makes logical sense, which is why I think people talk about it. But the data shows completely otherwise, and it's similar to the advice of like, "Oh, you're a goddess, don't look like a douche." It's the male equivalent of that, I think.
Well, let me interrupt you for a second and put the show on the other foot. Do women who portray themselves as more beautiful than they really are and present themselves and talk like they're more beautiful than they really are get more guys or not?
Not entirely sure what you mean by that.
Surely you've met a woman who really isn't all that. I mean, You're looking at her and looking at how other guys respond to her and going, hey, gentlemen, the Empress has no clothes here. She's not all that. But she presents herself like she's beautiful. She talks about how beautiful she is. She gets online and talks about beauty and being a goddess. And I'm so wonderful and men love me. And you're looking at her going, this is really just annoying.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. That's in my experience, girls like that usually are saying that to compensate, or more so probably internally to make up for the doubt that they have.
Well, and I'll tell you what else. It seems to work spectacularly for them, except on me. I can't stand it. They annoy the hell out of me. But it seems to work well for them. It seems like guys do give them the attention and they become more sought after. So is this kind of the male equivalent to that you're talking about here?
No, I what I meant by the male equivalent, not in a one-to-one thing, but in a very common piece of advice that I don't think is helpful.
Okay, so have things changed and the old advice was better back in the day, or has it never been good advice?
Sure. So number one about shirtless photos, I would say for most people, including me, shirtless photos not a good idea. The times when a shirtless photo is a good idea, whether you're looking for a relationship, which also ties into the third one about being douchey, whether you're looking for a relationship or a friend with benefit or just notches in your belt, having your shirt off if you have great abs is an awesome strategy because it inspires lust from women. I have been lean to the point where I had washboard abs. I'm not right now. I've let myself go a little bit. But in my experience, because I also used to be 100 pounds heavier, I alluded to the fact that I was a lot chunkier.
100 pounds isn't chunky, dude. Like you went from fluffy or almost damn to like being slim.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a huge weight loss story, dude. 100 pounds.
Yeah, that's what I alluded to. I used to be like a 2 out of 10, and now I'm like an 8 out of 10. So, I mean, other people say it. I'm not the one that said that.
Fair enough.
I wouldn't rate myself like that. But
yeah, you would. Why not?
Well, actually, it's funny. Quick aside. My mind kept thinking I was fat for 2 years of constant compliments on my body. I was like, they're just lying to me.
Yes.
Yep.
In your mind, you're still a fat guy.
Yep. It took 2 years of everybody at the gym and my friends and everybody being like, oh my God, you're so lean. Like, what's happening? This is awesome. It took 2 years of that for me to be like, they might be right about that. So yeah, I've been there 100%. I've been, objectively, I would say ugly, and I've turned it around. But to go back to the other part, there's a scene in Captain America in the first one where Peggy Carter first sees Steve Rogers when he comes out of the Vitapod and he's like buff as fuck. And that was the first time the actress saw Chris Evans with his shirt off. That's who he is. Might have been CG enhanced a little bit, but he's still buff as fuck and very lean. And he had to train for the movie extra. So he was looking amazing, washboard abs, probably not much enhancement that you see on the screen. And she, in the movie, reached out, almost touched his abs, and then caught herself. And that was actually not scripted. She said in an interview later that was her genuine reaction. And that was a moment of lust from that actress towards Chris Evans because of his abs. Abs are something, being lean and muscular is something that is, that girls can't control themselves around. And this is my experience as well as other guys who've gone through a similar weight loss experience. Across the board, girls just giggle around them. They want to touch them. They just walk by and rake their hands over your abs. That's why I like saying if you have great physique, have a shirt off. It's something that women will vehemently deny because it makes them look like a slut if they're like, oh my God, I'd totally swipe right on that guy. It's not something they'd be comfortable telling somebody that they don't know very well. But they might say, oh, that's so douchey, but behind closed doors, they're going to swipe right.
What about men drinking? You have lots of pictures of that.
Sure. So this is the caveat I would say. I don't have any because I don't go to bars and I don't like to drink. I do karaoke, but even when I do karaoke, I don't order drinks. I would say if you're a guy that does go out to bars every now and then or likes to go out on the town, having one on your profile shows that you're a cool dude, that you like to have fun. But I would agree with you. If you have more than one of you going out to bars or having a drink in your hand, that's pretty suspect. I would say one max. And my opinion is that it makes you look fun and it makes you look like you're not a total shut-in.
I think that's fair enough. But I think if you avoid it altogether, that's probably just as good.
There are other ways to show the same thing. I wouldn't say it's mandatory. It's definitely not mandatory. But it's an easy way to show that you like to go out and have fun. There's other ways to show that and other photos that you can get that show the same thing.
You are obviously specializing in taking solo photos of men. In other words, you get a photo shoot with a guy, and he picks a photo or two out of the photo shoot and puts them up there. I would say most definitely on an app in particular, the lead photo is the most important one, and that should be one you took. What other kinds of photos do you say a guy should put on his profile?
Sure. So the only reason I don't have too many social photos in the photo shoots I do is because logistics. I have had my clients invite friends and them be in the photos, but that's often not possible because of logistical purposes. Sometimes I've invited one of my friends to stand in for a photo. And so there are times I get social photos. I think if you have a social photo, one of the common issues is for you to either look shorter than your friend or not look like the center of the photo, or for it not to be clear which one you are. And I would say a really good way to combat that, it's a photo I like to take often. If you have a photo where you and your friend are facing each other, either having a drink or playing chess or doing something where you're facing each other, and the photographer, either your friend, either a third friend or me or somebody else, takes a photo over your friend's shoulder looking at you, then it still has you front and center in the photo. So it's not confusing which one you are. And it also makes you look like a king or like taller than your friend or like the more important one, and you won't even necessarily see your friend. And that's a photo I really like to get because it corrects all the mistakes that people usually make in social photos.
I think that's great advice. I've often said you don't want to be alphaed in your own photos by some other dude. So you just solved it. Fantastic. I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about being douchey in your photos or even being douchey in real life. Let's face it, man. Douchebags get pretty women.
Yeah, 100%.
Sucks.
I think there's a really great distinction I like to make about something related that will paint this picture for you. And a lot of it is related to girls will say they don't like douchebags, but then behind closed doors, they'll swipe right. In the old pickup community, there's a whole idea of negging. And I don't like the idea of negging, but there is something extremely similar that looks almost the same to somebody who doesn't know too much about social interaction. That is amazing, and that is teasing. And I feel like the only difference is the emotion behind it. When I'm teasing a girl, I'm not trying to knock her down a peg. I'm trying to have fun. I'm trying to, what they would call in the game, self-amuse. I'm trying to make a joke that makes me laugh. It's almost like, and I don't remember who said this, but somebody said this, and I want to give them credit, but it's almost like you're that girl's older brother, and you're just like teasing her or playing with her. You're not trying to hurt her.
Yeah, that would be David D'Angelo, the bratty little sister thing.
Yeah. I really like that dynamic, and that's the same dynamic as what some would call a fuckboy. And something that women they cream for is a fuckboy with a soft side. And you can't go skimpy on the soft side, but the soft side is something they earn when they get close to you.
All right, let's stop for a second. All right,
Sure.
Douchebag defined. In my mind, what I'm asking about here is a guy who thinks he's cooler than he really is.
Yeah, that's not good.
The reason why Dr.
That's arrogant.
Oz lost to a guy who is a turd sandwich in the Pennsylvania Senate race is straight up, he's a douchebag. He thinks he's a lot cooler than he really is. But those guys still get women. Like, everybody I've ever met who drives a Porsche 911 is a douchebag, unless they're racing one, like Paul Newman, okay? I mean, just you think you have just an inflated sense of how cool you are. Meanwhile, the coolest guy in the room is the guy who makes everybody else around him feel cooler. So when you're talking about teasing women and bringing out the playful in them and not being intimidated by them, I don't think that's douchey at all. I think that's downright attractive in the most primal way possible. So I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, I've done entire master classes on how to banter with women in a way that makes them laugh and feel comfortable, and teasing them is a lot of fun. I mean, you mentioned negging. A lot of guys misconstrued the old mystery method idea of negging to mean you're going around insulting women, which doesn't make them feel safe and comfortable at all, which is the big problem I had with negging. It was too poorly defined and too poorly explained, and guys were widely misapplying it. So if you're going around insulting women, thinking women are going to be interested in you, assuming you have any social wherewithal at all and any good looks about you, it'll be douchey. Otherwise, women will just roll their eyes and maybe even call security on you. But it seems to me these guys who go around thinking they're so cool, you know, with their faux hawk hairdos and doing duck faces into the camera and posing next to their 5 Rolls Royces or whatever, they're all getting women. And I mean, some guy's going to say, well, if you have 5 Rolls Royces, it's done for you. But I mean, I think you know where I'm coming from. It's the attitude. And it seems like some women or a certain ilk of women really do go after that guy.
Yeah, and if that's the girl you want, more power to you.
Boom. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If that's the kind of woman you want, more power to you. I think that I'm glad you defined what you meant by douchebag, because I was thinking something different.
Fair enough.
When I think douchebag, or like in the way that you said it, I would say pretty much every girl, or at least every girl who's secure in herself, wants a guy who is attractive and knows he's attractive, and not somebody who thinks he's more attractive than he is, but a guy who's confident. Like, I, at this point, know I'm pretty attractive, and I know my strengths, and I know my weaknesses, of which I have many, and I'm very confident in that, and I'm not going to overly self-deprecate. I'm not going to just be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm a confident guy. And so I come across, especially the way I dress when you first saw me with the hat backwards on my head, I come across, which is very purposeful, like a fuckboy with a soft side.
You know, you said you were 30. On your 31st birthday, you got to stop doing that. The shelf life for that is 30.
I have a lot of friends who are in their mid-30s who have a similar vibe. I think it does need a change. It can't be exactly the same. I can't look like I'm a guy in my mid-20s. But like, I have a leather jacket, I wear chain on my neck, I have bracelets and rings, and I think for a certain, like, you can let that go into your 50s and 60s if you want to. There are a lot of guys I've taken photos of who have a really cool vibe, and they're older. I've worked with people from the early 20s to my oldest client who is 70, and I've helped them get more matches and dates. So I had a guy on an interview I did recently, and he mentions a phrase I really love. And he said that for women, you need to, like, when you first attract a woman, attraction is more important than comfort. You can't have zero comfort, or she'll be really nervous meeting up with you. But attraction, you can't go skimpy on the attraction, or she's not going to see you as a sexual prospect. The closer you get to a woman, the balance changes. You need more comfort, and attraction is less important. But at first, and this is where, when somebody's swiping right on you, the most important thing is attraction. And that's where the fuckboy look comes in. The fuckboy look, which should be adapted. If you're older, it will look slightly different. But that is maximizing the attractiveness, which will get a girl to want to meet up with you. And as long as you have enough comfort on the back end, it'll work out. And then the closer you get to her, you can show more of your soft side.
Well, the raw attraction vis-a-vis the comfort, in my estimation, that can all take place within 15 seconds. It's not this long, drawn-out process. So, yeah, she has to think, oh, here's a guy I find interesting from a boy-girl perspective. And then as soon as you can make her feel safe and comfortable with you, well, the sooner the better. But, again, you know, we're applying all this to the crucible of online dating, which is a very cruel, sharp-edged sword in terms of you having a split second to impress this person with your looks. So I see where you're coming from. I think that's all well and good. His name is Joe Buchoff. He is the head of Dating Unchained up in Austin, Texas. and he will do a photo shoot with you, maybe give you some advice on how to do your photos. He will fly to meet you. You can fly to meet him. If you happen to be in Tejas, as both he and I are, well, you're in luck. He's right here in Texas, just like I said, up in Austin. And I've set up a special URL where you can see examples of his work and book him for a photo shoot. And that's at mountaintoppodcast.com/photos, PHOTOS. Now, what the heck? I'll put FOTOS up there too. If anybody's, nostalgic for the old days with Photomat and so forth. Anyway, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a very interesting discussion, and I dare say a good one. Thanks.
My pleasure. It's been great.
Yeah. And gentlemen, please go check out mountaintoppodcast.com. We've been doing monthly master classes. Also, the brand new program Unsettled is up there for you. It'll help you escape the suburban sleepwalk and go become a more interesting guy and live the life you want to live. And guys, you don't have to move mountains to do this. Some very simple habit changes, including letting your dark side breathe a little. Not meaning you're evil, just, not being Mr. Nice Guy anymore. All of that is in Unsettled. Guys are raving about that program. Also, if you have not talked to me yet for 25 minutes, I'm exactly who you think I'm going to be. Get on my calendar at mountaintoppodcast.com by clicking on the red button at the top of the page. Want to thank all of our sponsors, including Origin in Maine, Jocko Willink's company. Best jeans, best boots you've ever had in your entire life. And check it out, gentlemen. He's just expanded his product line. Check out mountaintoppodcast.com/origin for all the information there. If you have not yet picked yourself up a keyboard, I don't know why you're still carrying one of those old school Swiss Army knife looking things. Man, this is getting into the 21st century. This is not your grandfather's Swiss Army knife. Keyport has all kinds of attachments so you can personalize your 21st century everyday carry item. Good stuff. Also, my friends over at Hero Soap will make you smell like a man, which women always love. You can check out links to all three of our sponsors at mountaintoppodcast.com. And when you do, please use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 for an instant 10% off. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.